Morning and welcome to a new webinar series. My name is Martin. I'm user experience and user interface design at TMC and part of the product management team. Today we're going to talk about user-centric design, but before we start with our agenda and our topic, I would like to announce our upcoming webinars. First, on 26th of November, we have another webinar and the topic is environmental scanning for advanced truck monitoring, which will be hosted by my colleague Manuel. And then to wrap up our webinar series by the end of the year, on 16th of December, we have as a topic modern maintenance fleet management, which will be hosted by my colleague Fabian. These webinars are meant to be for machine manufacturers, maintenance companies and operators, infrastructure managers, basically everyone involved in the track maintenance process to get to know our products portfolio and how to be used on their machines, how to work with the systems, etc. As addition for my webinar personally, I would add that this will be also a lot interesting for our fellow UX designers who will learn how to manage this topic in our industry, but also our front-end developers who are in close collaboration with us. We continue with our topic, user-centric by design. The agenda for today will be basically a quick overview of what user-centric design is, what are the challenges that we are facing throughout the process, how do we do it, real-life examples from our portfolio, and we will wrap up this webinar with the glimpse of the future. So let's start with it. What is user-centric design? As by definition, we would say that the user-centric design is an iterative design process that prioritizes the needs, the behaviors, and the preferences of our end users and throughout the product development cycle. I try to show that process here with a little bit of a preview of it with our diagram and how it goes in the four stages. First, we have the understand context of use. Second, we have to specify the user requirements, then design the solutions, and at the end, we evaluate against the requirements. But because I've mentioned it's an iterative process, we can always go back, again, refine some requirements if it needs to be done, and so on. Some of the core principles that I like to mention about the user-centric design, first of all, of course, is the empathy. We need to understand our users, their behaviors, their preferences, their pain points, what they're trying to accomplish. And it's also really important to achieve this with involving them throughout the process of research and designing and development. And another core topic is that early and continuous user involvement is also helpful because it helps to define the requirements and evaluate the designs effectively, which will lead us to have as an end goal a successful product which has accessibility. User-centric design, like I mentioned, it's iterative process. It's not a linear one. We can always refine our design based on our user feedback and testing. And I showcased this process in the screenshots that you can see below. This is part of our machine condition observer application. The left screenshot that you can see, it's an older version before it's refined because this application functioned as a separate application from our main one. But on the right side, you can see refinement of the full application and the impact that it has done while merging it to our main platform. The challenges that we are facing. First of all, we have different use cases that use our product, like machine manufacturers, maintenance companies and operators, infrastructure managers, and also depends really on the environment that they're using our product. They can be on the go, which often can be used as a mobile device, for example. They can work in an office, they can work on field, on a machine, and it's important whether there is a bright or dark atmosphere. And as a third point that I would like to mention, we need to be sure that our product is responsive, it maintains consistency, of course, and it's accessible. Before I continue with our UI examples, the end product, how do we manage to solve these problems? I would like to mention what is the base for all of this. The TMOS, our main application, basically needs to serve as we want to tell as a main nervous system to the machine, which makes the machine smart. How do we do this? By following some of the frameworks that we're using. First of all, Angular Material Design is a framework that is a base to what we do. It's basically a UI component library with clear guidelines, which is basically a base to our design system, internal design system that we are using at TMC. On the screenshots below, you can see how our design system is managed by these libraries. First library that we have is the library of the components, which consists basically all of the components, reusable components that we are using to create our designs. And it's also a guideline for the developers later on for the development. The second library is the iconography. Then the third library that we have is the base screens or the layout of how it looks. And the fourth library is what we have as a foundation. This consistent of color palettes, for example, typography that we are using, spacing system, and so on. Now let me introduce to our first component at what's the impact of user-centric design when it's implemented in the right way. First, I would like to mention our tables. I can say that tables are mostly one of the most used components that we have because we have it so much through our app in different parts, and we have so many different data on them. But what makes it user-centric is the structure of the table and how we manage to do it. First, I will mention the top part of the table. Here we set up some rules of how the table should be positioned to maintain, first of all, consistency for the user. For an example, if a table has a search bar, we will position it top left, followed by the filter button, and then on the opposite side or right aligned at the top part, we have our action button. This full top part of the table is basically an interaction that is done that implicates to the whole table. But that's not all. We can also do additional actions basically followed by every row that we have in the table. Like for example, on the right side, I try to point that out in a zoomed version. This is an example of our actions, some of the actions that can be done. What is important here that also this section have set some rules in them. For an example, you can see that on the left side aligned, we always put our main action or mostly common action that is used by the users, then followed by some additional actions, and then right aligned is our action like delete or archive. But also what's important for them to be accessible is that we give them a little bit of color palette. So our main action, not only that it's always left aligned, it has the primary color in it, or if we take, for example, the delete action, it's always colored in red. This assures us that we have consistent table that are accessible and that lead intuition to the user. So wherever they're using our tables throughout the app, they can be the same. Second component that I will talk about is the stepper. Like its name says, the stepper is something that we use to showcase the steps which one user should follow to finish what he has in mind or whatever his working flow is. What is important for the stepper, I will give as an example here from this screenshot, we have TM Server. TM Server is an app where users use it basically for start a running measurement. What is important here to have this stepper is basically that it allows the users not only a guide through them, but it serves as a ramp to not make errors throughout the process. How this looks in a real life example. Imagine we are driving a car, for an example, and then we are coming to a section on the road when there is a train passing. So it has rail tracks. We have the signs there. We have the ramp that goes down, which show us some lead. The lead there is basically that we need to wait for the train to pass. We cannot go forward. And that is exactly what our stepper is doing in our situation. Because this step is critical, before starting a running measurement, the users need to fill out some info in this input field that you can see on the screenshot, and that info needs to be correct before the users proceed to the next step. That's how we use the stepper and ensure there is not error throughout the process. Next component that I would like to mention, or a feature more likely to say, is the previews that we implement. Here on an example, we can see a chart preview. This is an example of our fleet analytics part and a dialog which allow us to configure our charts before putting them into the main screen. Here we can do, for example, choose between signals or events that will be on the chart, that we visualize them also, putting some color on them, or also there is an option to have managing the thresholds of it. Why is important to have a preview here is allowing the user to have some visual way of what he's doing at the moment. And if I compare this to a simple everyday example is, imagine like we're doing a shopping, whether it's for clothes or it's a jewelry, we always like to see how it fits on us, how it looks, and that's what exactly the preview is doing here, allowing the user to have a visual presentation of what he's preparing to main screen, basically. Followed by this example, we have some similar implementation, but this is an interactive one. From the right side, you can see a screenshot for a machine cockpit. Machine cockpit basically is allowing the users to configure their cockpit for the machine. Different kind of widgets can be set, and what is important for this is the left part here that I try to showcase it as a GIF, what basically is improving the user experience. For example, where we have a situations where we need to put some values as an info, it's really strange if you just put the values there, but you cannot have a preview of it. And it's not enough only to have a preview, it's always better to have an interactive one. So if you can see from the example, basically what user is doing is filling up some info and values to the input fields. And the interaction here is that at the same moment, the widget is changing, the preview of the widget is changing. So the users are having basically more intuitive design. Followed by this example, the similar we have in our master data, pardon, where we configure our truck characteristics. This is an example of creating a clearance profile form. The same example previously, like the configuring the widget. We have input fields, we put values, and then we see how this preview is changing based on what we've put in our input fields. One of the most interesting components I can say that we've been improving is our fleet cards. Why it was so interesting? Because the fleet cards are playing basically a leading role in what we have as a fleet management system. What's important here is that we have a lot of info for the machines, which should be fit into the small cards, which will be later on responsible through our devices and also make the experience of the user better. First of all, our cards are compact. What does that mean? It has all of the necessary info in a small version, basically, which can be seen through different screens. Let me go and show you an example of its structure, basically. At the start, we have a picture of the machine. Then we have the name of the company, the name of the machine, and the name of the, basically, what type of the machine it is. For this example is a tamping machine. Then the second part of the card, we have indicator whether our hardware MDC is online. MDC is machine data connector, which we have on our machines, and it's showing us the state of it. Basically, below it, you can see that it's also showing the date and the latest time that it's used. Followed by that, it's similar presentation of whether the machine was active or not and the latest time of it. And also we have a notification of the maintenance situation of the machine. But what is critical on this card is the bottom part that is following of what we call quick links to a machine. So every machine basically have different parts that you can access from it of our fleet management system. Machine has a cockpit, it has its own reports that it produces, notification center, maintenance center, and so on. What was really important for the user here to solve is that we don't lead the user or give the users an option to always go to the landing page, then from there to need to access all of this stuff. With simply one click, the user with these click links is available to go, whether it's the cockpit of the machine, like I said, the reports or else. And as the latest part of this compact version of the cart is the machine details. Basically, this allows us with one click to collapse the cart and to showcase the users the most important information, like machine details or machine KPIs. Now comes the analytic part. I can say that this part is most complicated basically because it's filled with a lot of details, a lot of info. So I'll try to go step by step and show how it evolved. This is a screenshot which is showcasing a job detail, which is part of our job management system. Job detail is basically, you can imagine it like a zip file. It's consistent from many system protocols into one job detail. In the initial version of how this looked and analytics is basically what is shown on the screen. As a main view, we have the charts of the protocols. Then we had some pointers as a tooltip to showcase some additional details on them. But this wasn't enough for a better user experience. Why? Because many system protocols means a lot of charts in one job detail, and then the user need to scroll and scroll to see all of them. So what we did next as a refinement was showcasing or presenting our tabs. You can see them on the top. I circled them with a yellow rectangle. This tab basically allow us more flexible use of this job detail for the users. Why is that? Because the flexibility here is that the user can stay on the overview. That means that the user is seeing the charts all at once in the overview, but also switch to see the charts per protocol and have less of them on the main screen. But as I said, this is an iterative process. We talk a lot about with our users and we refine them by their needs and by their feedback and the testing that is done. So how we proceed with this analytics is with allowing a customization on the process. How does it look? Here, as an example, we have two dialogues. One of them is the chart setting as a customization option, which is consistent of the following. The users have the option here to invert their charts. They can see them in compact or default mode. There are different visibilities for the sliders that we are using, and also approved tooltip options which I will cover them in the next slide step by step. And on the right side, we have the chart visibility. In the initial version here, the users were able to basically, in a simple checkbox, select which charts would they like to see on the main view. But now, as an extra option here is they are able to drag and drop between them. And what this does is reordering the charts. So let's go step by step. First, we have the compact mode of the charts. On the left side, you can see what I'm saying is basically a default chart. This means that this chart is not in a compact mode. How that can be seen from the right example, if we compare it, is that left charts basically you can see they have the headings outside of the chart, additional informations outside of the chart, and the problem with this view is basically that doesn't allow the user to have as many charts possible in one view of the screen, which is solved by our compact mode. With the compact mode selected by a simple toggle, the user is now able to have more compact version of the charts, and all of this info is fitted in a more compact way inside the chart that allow the user to have basically more analytics on the main screen or more charts on the main screen. Followed up, another example of the customization, which was direct feedback of our customer, were the pointers. The issue that the users are basically facing with the initial version that we have, or the MVP, let's say, was that, as you can see from the left example, wherever you are hovering on the chart, these pointers are showing basically pointers from all of the charts and are following the user throughout this process, which leads to blocking the main content. So now we've improved that. And how do we did it? It's not only the default version that we have, the second version of customizing the pin is basically that now we can pin these tooltip options. What that means is that they can still be visible, all of them, but we can pin them on the charts wherever we like to stay there and not following us around as we do some work. The other option is what you can see from the right screenshot, that we can have a single chart pointer. That means if we point only on a single chart, that's where we will see the pointer. And the last option here for the user to customize it is to remove all of the tooltips or see none of them. Follow up the next customization part. I've mentioned the axis slider visibility. Whether they are on X or Y axis, we have different options now for our users. From the first screenshot that you can see, we have the slider on the global axis, and the interaction here is done by sliding with drag, for example, and then this applies for all of the charts. The second option for the user is to have this slider per chart. Then the third option is combined vertical charts, vertical slider. This is important when we have left and right tracks, for example, combined by the global one slider. And then we have an option to see only the vertical ones. So we also covered this part of the customization now for the users. I mentioned at the start, it's really important for one software to be responsible because today we have different use cases where it's used, whether to check some small informations on the go, like a mobile devices or a tablet view, and also, of course, everyday use on a desktop screen. So now we provide this for our users. Next thing I want to mention that it's also important is the light and dark mode. It's not that by default we should have this because that's modern now. All of devices have it, whether it's an app, whether it's a software or else, but it's actually solving a problem. Critical one, for example, our machine operators, because they are often in a dark environment. And imagine while making some measuring run, we are going through a tunnel, then it's a dark atmosphere, and having all these bright screens without allowing user to use dark mode, it's so not inaccessible. So that's why we've implemented the dark mode, and we have it throughout the app everywhere, basically. I will wrap up this components topic with our bottom sheet, which is our topic that followed us for the latest year that we worked on it, and is for me basically one of the important ones to solve some of our user problem. And why is it? On the left side, you can see an example also again from the analytics, and then we can see a pop-up window or a dialog with showing up some details. These details that are in the dialog are basically additional details that are necessary for the users. And how does it interact is basically when we are clicking on a marker that we have in analytics or somewhere in the chart, this dialog pops up to show us the additional info. But it was not a good solution for a long term because it's critical also. Again, I will mention the machine operators for an example where they are doing a measurement run because they see a lot of screens, a lot of details on the screen, and this compact mode that we've worked on is better suitable with the bottom sheet. That allows us, the users, to basically have a better overview of the main screen and see all of their charts, which is followed by the bottom sheet that can show the additional info like extra, and it's showed at the bottom on the screen. This allows, again, I can say more compact view of everything that we have on the screen. The last topic for today, as I mentioned, are the glimpse of the future or the glimpse of the future. What we're trying to do with our software is to give more flexibility to the user, how they are using it and how they're customizing it. What does that mean? As a glimpse of the future, we would like to announce the split and screen. What does this mean? Is, as an example from the photos that you can see here, is one office working environment, and from the right side we have a machine operator. What's common for them that usually today the users have using more than one screen. They can be two, they can be more than four screens even in the machines, and it's really important to give them flexibility and customize how they see their screens. How does it look and what's in plan? At the top example, it's our fleet analytic part, and you can see we have the main part with analytics. we have a bottom sheet with an extra info. In the side sheet, we have the map here. With allowing the user to split all of this into the screen, basically you are allowing the user to have a better experience and a better overview. This is especially important. Again, I will mention the machine operators because they are doing a live measurement process, and allowing them to use more screens is also giving a flexibility to their work and do it better. That will be all for today. We are a bit overdue, I think, with the time. So thank you all for joining us. First of all, for the end, I will leave us some Q&A session. Feel free to ask wherever you like to be discussed. And yeah, what I would say is if you want to follow us with what's coming up next, because there are a lot of big things coming, feel free to join us and follow us on LinkedIn. We will provide you with extra informations. So do we have questions? Let me check. Yes, we have one question first. What is the target user for the split screens? Great. Let me go back to the slide for a moment. As I mentioned, the split screens are basically used by everyone in this industry. Whether you're doing an office job, whether you're on a machine, nowadays you use more than one screen. If we were till now focused on having everything in compact mode and providing the user with the information needed in compact mode, the split screen is basically for every category of user which use more than one screen. But again, I will mention a critical point here is the machine operators, because they need to focus on many things, and it's always better to have an overview of for whatever they are doing in more than one screen. As an example here, I will come back to one slide. In the side sheet here from the right side, I hope that you can see we have the system status overview, which is one of the critical parts to be taken care of while running a live measurement. So imagine if the machine operator, instead of seeing this in the side sheet or wherever in compact mode, can easily with one click open it in another window. I have a separated dedicated window for that. So that's what we are trying to achieve and solve the user necessities with this. Do we have some other questions? Yes, we have a second question. With so many options and inputs, what safeguards or design choices help user avoid errors during setup and use? Oh, this is really interesting question. And there is a lot to talk about this. And yes, we take care of preventing the users of making errors in many cases. We have different type of implementations for this. If we take for an example, like the smallest input fields, which provide error state, of course, to error messages throughout the app. But to better showcase this topic is, let me go back to the slider for an example. I think it's a best example for what we have for today to showcase. Yes, here we are. I hope that you can all see the screen back again. Yes, the slider. As I said, from the real life example, the slider basically is serving us as a ramp in this process for the user. What this means is, for an example, this TM server that we've discussed before, I will go step by step through it. Before starting a live measurement here, it's really a necessity for the users to provide the right information before they start the measurement in the input fields that we have from below. If they provided the right information, that the stepper is allowing them to jump to the next step. That step can be 1, 2, or 3 steps, depend on how many systems they've selected. You can see that in the top part here. Then followed by this come the other steps, which is providing additional settings per system that the user selected. And at the end, we have another implementation that is the overview of what the user has done previously. The overview basically allows to the users to have the overview of what they've done previously, check all of the info, whether it's right or not, if they should go back or provide and start the measurement process. So with this paper, we are trying to avoid the errors that can be done. Do we have some other questions? As far as I can see, there are not any. Again, thank you all for joining us today. If you have additional questions later on, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn and follow Truck Machines Connected on LinkedIn to stay up to date with the news that they are coming. Thanks again. See you in another.